I'm Kiran Krishnan. I'm the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of Microbiome Labs.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Bayne. I'm the president of Microbiome Labs and co-founder of Microbiome Labs.
So we wanted to take an opportunity to tell you guys how all of this has kind of come together. And it's kind of an interesting story. It really kind of allows us to understand the advantage of seizing opportunity. And that's really how we've come about. I mean, if someone would have told me 6 years ago that I'd be, working and running a probiotic company, I would have told them they're crazy, right? I mean, nothing on the path that I was on would have indicated that at the time.
Exactly.
Probably similar for you.
Similar for me.
Yeah. But this is something that had to happen, I think, and it seems to be working. Changing lives.
At the time we met, I was running a functional medicine practice in the northern suburbs of Chicago, working 6 days a week, enjoying what I was doing, but also looking for something more. I had been very active in the supplement industry after spending 4 years in Belgium, working for a company that we eventually sold to Metagenics, and then moved back to the U.S. and started a family practice. And I was very involved in the industry, but I was looking for something more. I wanted to be more involved, and I'd try to do my own thing, and I was creating some formulations, certain specific digestive products and things like that. And then a friend of mine from high school, who's a medical doctor, who he had met separately, said, you guys got to get together. You're kind of doing a little bit of the same thing, and I think you guys would be good together. You should just sit down and have dinner and see if there's some projects you guys can work on together. So,
yeah, and so at the time, I had a research company. My focus was doing effective clinical trials for supplement companies. So when I got into the supplement space, one of the things I realized was there's just not enough trials at supplement companies, right? Yeah. And a lot of it is because pharmaceutical trials are designed for pharmaceutical companies. They're very expensive to do. Most nutritional companies aren't going to do $1 million trial to figure out that their product didn't work. And a simple trial would cost $1 million. So I created a clinical research organization to really look at, can we do smarter trials that fit the supplement company and nutritional industry better? And as I started doing that for companies, I was also being hired by companies to help them with developing products and putting scientific rationale together. So I was kind of heavy in the product development side, but very much behind the scenes and working on the research side. And fortunately, the company that I was with and had co-founded, that was involved in research and product development, was hired by a large multinational company to study probiotics. And they wanted us to look at what was in the marketplace and whether or not the claims that were being made and the types of formulations made sense, and then to give them a recommendation of what's going to be the next best probiotic. Right. And it was interesting because as we were going through it, I always had Tom in mind because that friend of his, John Abernathy, had us meet at some point, and we got together and we had started doing products together. We had worked on a couple of, like a prebiotic we worked on together, right? Yeah. A couple of small things because he had a market with other physicians and I could help create products. And but I always knew that he was interesting because he was a gut guy.
Right, that was the thing at that time. I was working, I was seeing patients, and I moved back to the U.S. and really, patients were coming to me, and what I was understanding from a clinical standpoint is that first of all, there were a lot of people coming with digestive health issues, and then on top of that, there were people with headaches or skin conditions, and when you took their history and kind of broke their case down, you realized that the source of their symptoms was actually their digestive system. So I got to a point where it was like 80% of my practice, 90% of my practice was digestive health issues, and the need to be able to stay on top of that and find new cutting edge ways of treating people with digestive issues. And so I'd become this kind of gut guy at that time when you started talking to me about the probiotics.
Yeah, and that was interesting to me because I had always worked in a retail space, working
Right.
with companies that had products out in the retail market. I never really worked with practitioners or doctors or functional medicine doctors. And it was interesting to meet somebody that was so focused on functional medicine, but understood that the gut was really the origin of many of the chronic illnesses that people are suffering from.
Right.
So when we started doing the research on probiotics, what we came to find out was that the vast majority of probiotics on the market just did not work. They didn't do what we thought they were doing. They weren't surviving. They weren't colonizing. The way people formulated products didn't really make any scientific sense. And then we discovered the spores, and we started working with the spores and understanding their functionality, and we really came to appreciate that these might be the key to really effective probiotics. So we took it back to the large company that had hired us to actually do this research, and they had just gotten bought out by a bigger company at that time. So when we took it back, they basically said, hey, this looks fantastic, but we just got bought out, so we're not making any changes to products. We can't really do anything with it. And at that time, the guy that clicked in my head was Tom. And I said, I remember, he's heavily focused on gut. He uses every probiotic on the market. And so I sent the information to you.
Yeah, and what's funny is at that time, I had become so frustrated with probiotics, I wasn't even using any of them. I had become so kind of callous about them. I was so frustrated with the fact that they would work, and then 2 weeks later it wouldn't work anymore. Or I'd see one patient it would help, and I'd see another patient with the exact same symptoms, and it wouldn't help them. And I'd become so frustrated, I wasn't even using probiotics at that point. And initially, when Kiran brought the information, I was like, ugh, another probiotic product, let's dress it up in a different way, and really it ends up being the same thing. And so, but when I got the information, I recognized that it was completely different. This was a whole new story in probiotics. And as I was sifting through the data and reading the information, I couldn't put it down. It was just like more and more. I had to read more, had to understand this, and it was a whole other story. It was this whole idea of reconditioning the bowel versus reseeding the bowel, and it just finally kind of felt like everything was coming together at once.
Yeah.
That was the best part of that initial assessment of the information. And then with the larger company saying that they weren't interested at the time, and us getting together, it was like, let's jump in, let's do this together. And so that's where we started.
Well, and our first attempt, remember you validated for me the importance of the product, because you're a practitioner day to day working with this kind of stuff, and in fact had been fed up with most probiotics, because I remember one of the products you had given me for gut health was that fermented product. So it was really a ferment. Right. Because you had not been using probiotics. Maybe Saccharomyces at the time.
Right,
but
exactly.
That's about it. But you had validated the importance of the spores. Right. But we weren't sure we were going to jump in and create a company yet, because remember the first thing we did was send it to the CFO that you knew at Metagenics.
Yes.
And so our first knee-jerk reaction was, this is too much for us to do. Neither of us have launched a product into a market of our own. So let's send it to another company in this space who does a great job of educating doctors and marketing doctors, and let's see if they want to take it from us. And fortunately, again, they came back and they weren't ready or weren't willing to do it.
Well, my arrogance, I wanted to do it right then, but I just didn't know how to do it. That was part of it too. But the idea that the connection that I had to Metagenics, that we could potentially sell it to a larger company, it seemed like a safer play. It seemed like a smarter play at that time. So when we didn't get the immediate attention we were looking for from them, then it became more apparent that it was like, we got to do this on our own.
We got to do it. So we sat down and we used the strains that my other research company had developed, and we formulated Megaspore. We created a 5-strain cocktail. We knew those 5 strains were important. We utilized the right dosing. The way we came up with dosing is, these spores have been prescription drugs in 2/3 of the world outside of the U.S.
Right.
for 60 years. So we just follow the prescription dosing. And we created a formula that we thought would do some amazing things in the gut. But we didn't know for sure, right? So there's a lot of scientific rationale to think that it's going to be beneficial, but we're really not going to know until humans start using it. And I know for Tom, there was a lot of validation on that. And for me, that was one really important validation. And Tom should tell you his, but we made a pilot batch, and then you really give it to your 100 most difficult patients.
And going into that too, I mean, we devoured the data. I mean, we devoured it. We looked at each individual strain. We looked at all the safety and efficacy. So by the time we had product in our hand, and knowing that product was more stable than the products that we were looking at in the studies, we felt confident that what we were looking at was going to be very beneficial. But again, now we were throwing it all into a mix together and giving them all in one situation. And so it was it felt like an educated decision to do it. It felt like we weren't going to do any harm, but we really didn't know what we were going to do. And so the first, I think, 50, 70 bottles came to me, and I gave them to my most difficult digestive health patients. I gave them to patients with Crohn's disease, patients with ulcerative colitis, patients with irritable bowel syndrome. I had patients come in with acute symptoms. I had patients come in with chronic symptoms. And I started giving it to them. I just said, I know what we've been doing in the past, but we're going to shift up. We're going to just take this probiotic. Let's see what happens. And one after the other, patients started coming back. I feel better. Some of them felt dramatically better. All of them were coming back with positive reports. Well, I'm 10% better. I'm 80% better. And so we're starting to bring these back in, and now we're 6 weeks in, and now we've got another batch of 150 bottles. And so we're giving them out to patients. So now the group of patients is becoming larger and larger, and the feedback we're getting from people is that the bloating's going down, that the inflammation's going down, the cramping is going down, and then the eczema's going away. And the longer these patients were on it, we're starting to see secondary effects of the immune system and autoimmune diseases symptoms starting to resolve. And we started going, wait a minute, we got to back up here. What do we got here? What's going on? And so I think at that point, that's when we decided if we were going to do this and we were going to do it effectively, we needed to really understand what we were doing. We needed some research, and with Kiran's background, it was an easy segue to jump in and start doing the clinical studies.
Yeah, and so for me, the hearing the validation from Tom's patients was a huge important factor in setting my mind to jump into this head first. The big validation for me came with, at that time when we first started, my son, who's my firstborn, he was about 9 months old at the time when we first got the product. And he ended up being a C-section baby because he was breech. So I knew, understanding the microbiome, that there would be some immune issues and things like that we would have to overcome in some nutritional way. And one of the things that we started noticing when he was younger is that he would have little patches of eczema and things like that and not very good diaper rash, and then also he would start waking up with the bags under the eyes and little runny nose, and his pediatrician said, well, he's developing environmental allergies, and so we got to start thinking about maybe getting him on baby Zyrtec or whatever the drug would be at the time. And and I said, no, hold off. We're getting spores. I'm going to try it because I understand the connection between the gut immune system and allergies and all that. And so he was the first person I tried it on besides myself.
Right.
He started taking it at the age of 9 months at the time, 1 cap a day. Mm-hmm. Within about 3 months, all of those symptoms started going away. Every little eczema patch that he had was gone. The evidence of developing allergies was totally gone, right. And that was extremely compelling to me. And then I think not being marketers, not being seasoned, product professionals, we actually ended up looking at this as a science project,
right?
Rather than a product business marketing launch. and we were seeing these amazing clinical effects, but we really needed to understand how that was happening. And so any other company in our position would spend about 8 times more on marketing and product launching than on science. And actually, vast majority of companies don't do any research on their finished product.
Right.
And so we saw that as being a real issue with the probiotic space, and so we wanted to really understand our product. But to launch it, we decided to start going to shows. We decided that we had to get in front of doctors and talk about it, to present this paradigm shift, and of course we almost had to close shop in the first 6 months. Right, we had a very small budget amount of money to launch the product, and our very first show we went to, nobody knew who we were or anything, and the two of us are working a booth, and we bought a very expensive lunch sponsored lecture. The first time I think that show had ever done that, right? So they gave us some crazy price, and we spent all of this effort trying to market that lunch lecture. We wanted to get a crowd of people in there and tell them the story, give them the science, and we had 2 people in that lunch lecture, and we blew about 20% of our total launch budget on that one show. Now the good news was we picked up one of them as a client. So we had a 50% conversion rate, and in fact, that doctor is still a client today. He was our first client. He's still same consistent amount that he buys every single month. But we did our second show. It wasn't much better. I think we had 5. Right. Yeah. By the end of the second show that we did, this is in a 3-month period now, we had blown more than half of our budget, and so we were very concerned that if we didn't start getting some momentum, that this would all be dead before it even started, right? But fortunately, by the 3rd and 4th show, we got more and more people in, and we just started hitting the road and going to shows. And nowadays, as a company, we do 148 shows. We'll do this year.
148 shows. Right? Yeah, I think that first year we probably did like 6.
Yeah, 6.
And really focused in on the chiropractic profession. Me being a chiropractor, and so. Slow and grinding, but what was interesting is that, and that's kind of at the same time, even though we were struggling, it was kind of time where we knew we kind of got something, because we were getting feedback from the doctors, and they were telling stories, and they were saying, hey, my patient with Crohn's disease is doing phenomenal, and my patient with eczema, and this is fantastic, and so in addition to what I was seeing in my clinical practice, now I'm getting feedback, similar feedback from other practitioners in the space, and so that really then we're like, all right, now we've got something, we got to run with this.
And then every bottle we sold, we would take $1 of it and put it towards marketing, or it was $1.25 or something like that, and then but we would take like the rest of it and put it towards research. And we really, had this need to invest heavily in studies. And right now, of course, we published our landmark study last year, but we have 11 other human clinical trials going on right now. So we've been banking on the science since day one, and we will always do that. We'll always bank on the science.
There's nobody in our space doing the clinical studies that we're doing. It's unheard of. But I don't say that, or we don't say that in a way to say how great we are. It's how it should be. It's having an understanding of, what is it that your product is doing? How is it helping people? If it's helping people, can you prove that? And if it is helping people, how is it helping people? And so I think that's really the major point of differentiation between Microbiome Labs and everybody else in our space.
Yeah, and here we are today, and as we talk about the story, this was just 4.5 years ago. This wasn't that long ago, right? So since then, of course, we've published a study. We're finishing 4 studies this year. We've got 11 clinical trials going on right now. We're very fortunate to have over 10,000 active doctors, practitioners that utilize the product on a regular basis. We've got an incredible team of people that believe in what we're doing, that believe in the product, and that are extremely supportive of the mission and vision of the company. And our big focus now is, how do we provide you as the doctor or you as the patient with tools that you can utilize to really take your health and your wellness into your own hands, and be able to empower yourself to be able to fix things that really need to be fixed at the core in order to help with the issues that people are having. More and more we're seeing with the way conventional medicine is working is that we're not really dealing with the core issues, right?
Right.
So it becomes incumbent upon us in the integrative or functional medicine space to really address the core issue, and we think an effective probiotic and other products that come around that, which we now have, will be a resounding answer to that problem. So thank you all so much for watching this, if you did watch the whole thing. But it's been an interesting journey, and we have so much more to bring to you. We are continuing to invest in the research. Tom and I continue to brainstorm and have a lot of ideas, and hopefully we'll see you at an event soon.
More than likely we'll see you on the road, because that's where we are.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.